All right, welcome to session 1452, Weaponizing Backup and Recovery, Defending Against Ransomware with IBM Spectrum Protect and Predator. Cyber resiliency or data resiliency has become one of the most pressing topics in the industry today. Over the course of the last 18 months, many customers, business partners, and IBMers alike have asked many times, what does IBM Systems have in its portfolio that supports data resiliency? As it turns out, IBM Systems has a lot to offer. Welcome, I'm Dwayne Watkins, Director of Modern Data Protection with a focus on data resiliency. This presentation is designed to take you through some of our resiliency capabilities within the IBM Systems portfolio, and as well as how we partner with some of our technology partners such as Predator to really bring this solution to market. As you're aware, it's not just large companies that are under attack, but companies of all sizes of every industry are under attack. Recent cybersecurity vulnerabilities reported that businesses fell victim to ransomware attacks every 14 seconds. And in 2021, businesses will be under attack every 11 seconds with a cost of $20 billion US. It's clear that no data is safe. The cost of these attacks is not small for any industry. The slide shows the average cost of cybercrime by various markets. And this data was taken from recent Harvard Business Review for cybersecurity. We know that one of the main reasons that businesses struggle with cybercrime is due to the fact that in 2019, the mean time to discover that a business had been breached was 206 days. Think about that. The average time for cyber attack lies dormant in a business that was over 6 months before it was found. Now, to make sure we're talking about the same content, right? When we talk about cybersecurity versus cyber resiliency, it's important to understand there are two aspects against bad actors. There's cybersecurity, of which IBM is the best in the world. And there's also about keeping the bad actors out of the data center. However, as we also just learned, it's not if they will get in, but when they do. They can bring down an entire data center. Cyber resiliency is all about how a business has architected their data center to withstand an attack and quickly get back in operation after incident has happened. All right, so I want to cover a few, 4 capabilities of cyber resiliency across block, file, object, tape, and software-defined storage in the cloud. The first is isolation, which is the degree of separation or snapshot or backup data from the rest of the network. Isolation can be achieved through logical means by using capabilities such as IBM Safeguarded Copy or Cloud Object Store. Isolation can also be achieved through physical air gap with tape, Spectrum Protect, or products. Next is immutability or tamper-proof storage, which prevents an attacker, external or internal, from changing or deleting data. IBM offers WORM, write once, read many, storage solutions, and again, DS8000 Safeguarded Copy, WORM, tape, Spectrum Scale, immutable file sets as well. Performance. It's also important capability of cyber resiliency framework. How fast can an organization recover from a cyber attack? While tape excels in isolation and immutability of backup data, it can take hours or even days for recovery. It's also important to point out that not all encryption is created equal. Data at rest encryption migrates the threat of someone stealing drives from a data center and being able to access data from them. IBM definitely has encryption solutions to mitigate this threat, which we'll talk about as well today. All right, with that, I wanted to introduce Catherine Nasaba, who works within the offering management modern data protection, data resiliency portfolio that works around making sure we enhance and bring together the breadth of not only our portfolio, but also as we work closely with our partners. Catherine is responsible for our partner integration work that we're doing here within the portfolio. So I would like to introduce Catherine, who will tell us a little bit more about the offering that we have with Predator. It also brings together our cyber resiliency capabilities along with the benefits of Predator solutions. So Catherine?
Thank you, Dwayne. Hello, everyone. Dwayne, you're right on in saying that business and technology partners are an important growth component for any organization. At IBM, we are focused at leveraging partners who have complementary offerings to deliver solutions that meet business needs. Joining us here today is the CEO and Managing Director of Predatar, Alan Rick. Now, Predatar is an automation and orchestration platform designed to make managing the IBM Spectrum Protect portfolio simpler and faster, thereby freeing up infrastructure teams to add more value to their businesses. The platform does this by combining intelligent automation with powerful insights to put users in control of their backup and recovery. Predatar gives users the tools to tackle complex data challenges such as disaster recovery testing and performing ransomware recovery in under 60 seconds. Alan Rick, welcome to this session.
Thank you, Catherine.
So we're here today to discuss how the Predatar platform works in harmony with IBM's software-defined storage to maximize its proven data protection and automation capabilities while helping organizations to reduce the risk of business disruption and financial losses due to malicious destruction and ransomware attacks. So I'll start with you, Al. When we spoke before this event, you did talk about how there are parallels that Predatar sees between cyber resiliency and the recent pandemic. Could you shed a bit of more light on this, please?
Yeah, I'll be delighted to, Catherine. First of all, I think Dwayne raises a really important distinction between cybersecurity and cyber resilience. It reminds me of the response of many people in the United Kingdom to the threat of the pandemic in the first place, being surrounded by the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and the English Channel. Been an island and been having surrounded by a moat didn't stop the virus wreaking havoc on the UK shores. And really, it was the response to the pandemic that became more important than keeping it out in the first place, which was always going to be an impossible task. But clearly, there are many ways in which the spread of malicious software programs is indeed like the spread of the biological virus, COVID-19, but also there are many big differences. And I'd like to start, first of all, with those differences. For one, the problem of ransomware viruses is a relatively recent occurrence in history. Ironically, the first ever ransomware virus was created in 1989, funnily enough, by a Harvard-trained evolutionary biologist by the name of Joseph Popp. Mr. Popp thought it was a good idea to send 200,000 diskettes to delegates of a World Health Organization conference on HIV and AIDS. When the diskettes were inserted, the software program encrypted and deleted key information. That virus was called the AIDS Trojan, also known as PC Cyborg, and it wreaked havoc. Now, biological viruses, however, have been around, well, forever. The bubonic plague, which claimed over 200 million lives, occurred in the 14th century. The second difference relates to growth, or in terms of the incidence growth or prevalence over time. Whereas the incidence of computer viruses has increased from 60,000 detections in the whole of 2011 to more than 100,000 daily by 2018, there is no real evidence that biological viruses, the growth of those over time, has increased. Certainly not by natural means, at least. But back to the similarities, Catherine. The ever-increasing global connectedness, at least until 2020, of course, through networks, whether that be aeroplanes, trains, wide area networks, local area networks, has allowed both software and biological viruses to spread very fast, in some cases exponentially, wreaking havoc very quickly. It's also true that not all viruses are bad or damaging. Just as most software programs are used for positive reasons, many viruses are essential to human life. And in fact, it's commonplace for scientists today to use viral vectors as a key delivery mechanism in gene editing. However, the most striking similarity is really how people and institutions respond to pandemics and similarly ransomware attacks. Most national governments, when hit by the pandemic in early 2020, were first asking the question, what's going on here? Then they set about searching for the correct playbook. If you remember, different governments took very different paths initially, and with the benefit of hindsight, we were able to measure the efficacy of the various paths taken. Most importantly, as it relates to cyber resilience, some Asian countries who had more recent experience of virus pandemics, notably MERS and SARS, were much better prepared. They seemed to know which path to take, and they acted very quickly and calmly. These societies recovered more quickly than many Western societies who didn't have similar practiced runbooks to follow. The other parallel is how governments went from crisis to panic mode about the time of the first lockdown to a much more assured approach over time. The typical responses became much more considered by the time the second, third, or even fourth wave struck. They had learnt the playbook and steadied the ship. In the same way, if you've been hit by a malicious attack before, wouldn't you be better prepared to respond more effectively when attacked again? Perhaps this is only partially true, and definitely true if you don't evolve. The bad actors are not standing still, and the sophistication of ransomware viruses is always evolving. For example, it was only in 2017 that the first case of a ransomware virus, which deleted backup copies, was recorded. Now a standard good backup is no longer your get out of free jail card. So what we need to do is have a fully tested, proven process for dealing with emergencies, be they public health related or software weapons of destruction. We believe that the cornerstone of being cyber resilient is not just down to your technology stack or architecture, but in also having proven processes to detect, respond, and recover to a malicious attack. After all, the first attack for a business could be its last if it's not properly prepared.
Thank you all. Now, Rick, over to you then. Looking at the problem of ransomware specifically, what do you see businesses doing in order to prepare themselves for when they're targeted and attacked?
It's a great question, Catherine. As Al mentioned, many businesses now are starting to plan and prepare for ransomware. If you look out in the market, a lot of the vendors that are out there today, and you listen to the conversations that business leaders are having around ransomware, they're all talking about similar things. The way they're looking to boost their cyber resilience is with point solutions. So things like encryption, things like air gaps, immutable storage. These are all point solutions that businesses are looking to put in place. Now, obviously, they're all absolutely vital in helping businesses combat ransomware, but they're only a small part of the story. So when you look at the problem of ransomware, there are lots and lots of stats out there. You Google ransomware statistics, and you could sit there all day reading lots and lots of scary statistics. They range from everything from Gartner, who've got some really good research on talking about you've got a 3-in-1 chance over the next 3 years of being impacted by ransomware, through to the cost of recovering from ransomware is doubling every 12 months. And there's everything else in between. Now, the point is, when you talk to businesses about stats, most businesses know that ransomware is a real threat, and they understand the criticality of that. So, using this presentation to talk to you about stats today, we're not really moving the conversation on. We're not really adding that much value just talking about stats. What we need to talk about is how do we put strategies, put solutions in place that help people combat against ransomware. So if we all agree that ransomware is essentially a ticking time bomb and it's not a case of if, but when, how do we move the game on? How do we get business leaders into the mindset that they need to move the conversation on from just these point solutions of things like air gaps and immutability? And how do we give them complete confidence and the control they need that should they get hit by ransomware, they can guarantee that they will recover? At Predator, we believe the answer to that is automation and orchestration. It's giving people the tools and the confidence they need that should they be hit by disaster, they can absolutely recover from that.
You raise a good point, Rick, talking about the frequency. And one of the things that we see in backup and recovery across hybrid cloud is the complexity it has, right? And the complexity only increases when one adds in the issue of ransomware. Al, could you please dive a bit deeper into the complexities surrounding the problem, and how do you see Predator coming into play?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. No, you're right when you say that the task of enterprise-wide backup recovery, the administration of that is certainly a challenge in itself. But backup is a critical weapon in any company's arsenal in the fight against ransomware. Now, we would define the daily administration of backup as a complex problem in that there are multiple factors to be considered and often many ways to solve the problem. Backup requires constant attention, it's time consuming, and it's got many moving parts. In fact, a recent survey estimated that somewhere between 10 and 12% of all companies' data, on the average, is not even backed up at all, and it's completely unrecoverable. And that's the best case business as usual example. If you add in the fact that data is spread across many multiple geographies, you've got on-premise workloads, off-premise workloads, physical machines, bare metal machines, even down to potentially new environments such as container clusters, then this just adds to the complex landscape that we're having to deal with. Now, as many crises or emergency situations, a ransomware attack actually escalates our complex problem to one which is chaotic. And a chaotic problem is one where the relationship between cause and effects just breaks down. And in that case, having reliable information is critical in this chaotic, uncertain situation. So if or when things do get chaotic, how do we ensure that you don't respond poorly, like many of the governments did when hit by the pandemic? How can you take control from the first notice of an attack and start to make good decisions? This is what we want to demonstrate today. To show you how to take control and use a backup system, such as IBM's Spectra Protect technology, to fight back should disaster strike. So we have 3 questions to ask today. First one is, how can you set up your backup estate to minimize the chance of ransomware infection? Secondly, how do you ensure that your backups will recover successfully in the event of a ransomware attack? And thirdly, how do you ensure that your backups are infection-free before you restore? I'll now hand over to Rick, who will demonstrate how the Predatar platform can help you take control of the situation when faced with a ransomware attack.
Thanks for that, Al. As Catherine highlighted before, Predatar is an automation and orchestration platform designed exclusively for the IBM Spectrum Protect suite of products. Predatar has been designed around the key personas of the backup administrator, the IT manager, and business end users. Each user is delivered an experience that has been crafted to intuitively serve them with the tools and insights they need to ensure they're in complete control of their business's backup and recovery. Now today we're going to focus on the cyber resiliency features found in the platform. As Al mentioned, items such as encryption, air gaps, and immutable storage are key components to any cyber resilient backup solution. The great news is that IBM and Predatar have you covered in this respect. With Predatar, end users can easily offload data to the IBM cloud or any major third-party cloud services to create a natural air gap from your primary data stores. As you can see, users can quickly zero in on the data they wish to air gap, and then with a few simple clicks, they can see how much this will cost, and if they're happy with that, they can begin the offload. It's a similar story for immutable backups. If you want to create a third copy of your data and lock this away in immutable storage, then again, this is made easy with IBM and Predatar. IBM offers both on-premise and cloud-based solutions for immutable storage, and with Predatar, we make it simple to select the critical workloads you wish to make a third copy of. With a few clicks, you can create these immutable copies with your own defined retention periods and have complete confidence these backups are 100% locked down. However, at Predatar, we believe that these are only one part of the puzzle. Having third copies that are immutable and air-gapped are of course vital elements in your arsenal when you're fighting back against ransomware. But even with this, how do you ensure that your backups will recover in the event of a disaster? And if they do recover, how do you ensure that they don't have dormant ransomware buried in them that once restored simply begins to re-impact your estate? On the right-hand side of the user's main dashboard, we have Predatar IQ. Predatar IQ is designed to give administrators all the insights they need to ensure that their backup and recovery estate performance is at its optimal. In here, we can see the platform has spotted a number of backups that it predicts are at a risk of failed recovery. So how is the platform predicting this? Put simply, the Predatar Disaster Recovery Automation Engine allows you to continually test your backups 24/7, 365, and it will proactively alert your administrators to any failed backups. Over time, the system will begin to learn from this and will be able to alert you to any untested backups that are at risk of failed recovery. For this demo, I've turned off the automatic recovery testing so we can take a look at how this works. As we can see here, we have 5 backups that Predatar has marked as a high risk of failed recovery. So let's test one and see what happens. As you can see, it only takes a few clicks to begin this process. From here, the platform will begin the recovery of the backup to a target of your choice. In this case, we're using the IBM cloud. What the system will now do is it will test that the backup has recovered correctly, and it will then present us with the results. In this case, the backup is successful, so will be marked as such. At any point, your IT or compliance teams can then run a report to get a full picture of your complete data recoverability. Not only does this type of automation save you time, but it helps you move away from those once-a-year DR tests and ensures you can test your backups on a continual basis and have the confidence that, should disaster strike, you know how you can get your data back. The third part of the puzzle is, how do we ensure that those backups are clean? Let's take a look. So going back to Predator IQ, we can see the platform has identified a number of backups it believes are suspect. Predator uses a patented algorithm to identify backups that could be subject to ransomware infection and presents these to the user. What we can then simply do is add the backup to the quarantine area and begin a safe and controlled recovery. What the platform will do is restore the selected backups to the quarantine target of your choice. This could be your own dedicated on-premise hardware, or as is the case here, a cloud target. The system will then run a virus scan using a third-party antivirus platform of your choice and will then present the results back to you. As we can see here, the backup we have tested is indeed infected. With one click, we can now do two things. We can clean the backup, and we can also search across the rest of the backup estate for the same infection signature. What the system is doing now is scanning at file level for that global infection signature. As we can see, the platform has found a number of infected backups and clearly shows to the end user when the earliest infection dates occurred. We can now begin a controlled recovery of the latest potential clean copies to the quarantine area to check they are indeed clean. From here, we can begin a side-by-side comparison of the latest clean copy against the latest infected copy to understand the impact of any data changes and/or potential data loss. At the same time, Predator will also raise a ransomware case and kick off a series of workflows to notify the relevant people in your business of the issue. You and the wider teams can then use the orchestration tools found in Predator to automate a controlled recovery of clean data to your live environment.
Thank you, Rick. So to summarize, the lesson we hope you'll take away from today is, whether you're dealing with a pandemic or a ransomware attack, it's essential that you plan and prepare for complex problems and prevent them escalating into chaotic ones. You simply cannot afford to learn as you go. Making mistakes with ransomware recovery increases the risk to your business, your brand, and your customers. Predator adds recovery automation and orchestration to IBM's powerful Spectra Protect data protection software, making it easy for you to both plan for and respond to ransomware attacks. It might even help you lower those increasingly rising cybersecurity insurance premiums. A solution from IBM, powered by Predator, will help you to take control of your cyber resilience strategy. I'll now hand back to you, Catherine, to help close out the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al and Rick. It's been a very informative session. And as we conclude, I would like to take it back to where this all began. Dwayne, could you tell us how this fits into the bigger picture around cyber resiliency?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Rick and Al. Again, now we want to just kind of pull a couple threads back together and really look at the cyber resiliency capabilities and kind of the 6 areas, right, that we think deliver a comprehensive layered approach to resiliency and recovery. Again, having automation and orchestration, again, what you can see from the solution that Predator has demonstrated to us provides you a level of speed when you're trying to recover an environment. Automation also helps to practice or test recovery capability in a less onerous way. Between encryption with IBM's Flash core modules and encryption with data in flight, even to the cloud, data is always protected at rest or in flight. When isolation is needed for data from the network, such as that it cannot be attacked, taking advantage of air gap is the best way. The next thing to consider is having the ability to recover from snapshots. While snapshots are not a guaranteed way of ensuring a fully in cyber resilient environment, snapshots can provide significant time savings for recovering an environment. And finally, having a solution that can help monitor backup data for infected data can provide a significant time savings when trying to ensure an environment is free from ransomware. At the end of the day, cyber resiliency is not only about one thing. It's about ensuring there are proper solutions and proper processes in place to make sure that no matter what happens, businesses can get back up and running as quickly as possible. I want to thank the team for their time today, the excellent demo and information shared by Al and Rick. and Catherine for moderating the session here with the team. Hope we found this informative, and most important, go out and practice. Thank you.